Alright guys, we're back with another episode of Joe Culpepper Outdoors. Today I'm going to be talking about some jigs I like to throw in different situations. Be going over what rod I like to use, the line, and the colors and the types of trailers I'm going to be putting on these jigs. Just for any of those of you who are new, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you like what you see in this video, because I promise you there will be more to come. I would say a lot of knowledge. I'm not trying to brag, but I have crammed a lot of knowledge into my mind about bass fishing over the past few years. So if you have any video ideas for me, anything you want to know about, drop me a comment down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible about that. Maybe probably gonna make a video on it, to be honest with you. Let's jump right into it. First type of jig we're gonna be looking at today is actually one that I put up in the video before last, I believe, when I went over my top five soft plastic baits. And it's just your basic swim jig head. And these are some I got at the local discount fishing tackle store. Obviously, I buy a lot of stuff from there because I don't have a lot of money and they'll work. I don't actually know that I've caught a fish on these particular ones per se, but it's always good to have something like this. It's going to be a smaller profile. Obviously going to be pairing that up with something like this right here in a shad type color. You know, that blue translucent type color pattern with some blue and silver flake in it. I go ahead and apologize about my voice. I mowed the grass today. Allergies are kind of flaring up on that. But you can either use something like that, or you can use something more like this. That is a more of a bluegill style color, and that works better in your small ponds sometimes. It just really depends on the situation, what you feel like throwing is. And I'll tell a lot of people this: 90% of fishing is confidence. Because if you have confidence in what you're throwing, then you're going to wind up catching fish on it, very, very likely, unless it's just a bad day. If you don't have any confidence in it, probably not going to catch any fish. But that's the first bait, or the first jig we're going to go over. Apologize for that. The second type of jig is going to be very similar to that one, and that is a basic swim jig with a skirt on it. Obviously, this is more something that will imitate a bluegill with the darker green. It's like a green pumpkin color, got some blue in there. I believe this is a Booyah, or Z-Man. It's Z-Man, apologize. Future me, if you figure out how to edit that out. But what I'm going to be throwing on the back of this for trailers is, honestly, I like to get away some of the time from the traditional swim bait like this. Is a Houdini colored swim bait. It'll work just fine on that, but personally I prefer something like this right here, which is a small grub and watermelon red. Obviously, if you guys watch my video where I'm talking about my top 5 soft plastic baits, green pumpkin, I say, watermelon red was a theme going on there with the colors. And I've actually been doing a little bit of experimenting. That one that you just saw here, this is a Zoom Fat Albert, I believe is what they call it. And this is a Big Bite Baits watermelon red grub. I'm not for sure which one I like better yet. I hadn't used them enough to really tell, but both of them are good. Whichever, if you just get your hands on some, if you are interested in throwing something like that, really good thing to use when the wind is blowing. Go up on the where the wind is blowing up on the bank. Go to that side and throw a swim jig up around that area. Covers a lot of water really fast. You can generally bomb them, you know. Good gracious, I don't even know how far you can throw them things. But you can chunk them to Narnia and bring them right back, and generally that's a good way to catch fish on windy days. Both of those are going to be thrown on, depending on the situation I'm in, it's probably going to be on 15-pound fluorocarbon or copolymer line. I haven't experimented a lot with fluorocarbon. Or 50-pound test braided line. I've gone as low as 30-pound test line, but yeah, keeping up with this, I've got, you know, if I had 5 different spools of line for braid, and I had them all on different rods and stuff like that, it just get confusing where in my position right now. Now, if I get more subscribers, of course, start making some more money, then I will upgrade to a bass boat, and then that will enable me to buy more fishing rods and more fishing reels to fit into the boat. But that's getting off topic. I want to go over a few more jigs, and I'll break down rod and reel setups when I'm done with this. I just want to fit all this in. Next up is a chatterbait. Now, a lot of people, and I'll say this, spinnerbait, chatterbait, whichever one you have more confidence in, throw it. I don't believe I've ever caught a bass on an actual spinnerbait. Now, I've used beetle spins, caught a lot of fish on beetle spins. I love beetle spins. I just don't like the spinnerbaits that much. But chatterbaits, I've had a lot of success on them. I've caught, I think the biggest fish I've ever caught on a chatterbait was somewhere between 6 and 7 pounds. I have a lot of confidence in them. White and chartreuse, basic color. Obviously, this is a Z-Man chatterbait. This one's seen some use, as you can tell. It's kind of messed up, got some discoloring on it. But they catch fish like just about like nothing else does. And I've also got a different color. I don't prefer Mosquito. I prefer to stay with the traditional white and chartreuse colors, but depending on the situation, something like this might be a little bit better. Imitating a bluegill, darker blade on it. Green, got some purple fleck in there, some dark spots on there. You can really see it on that camera. It's real nice how the camera picks this up. But on those, I'm going to be throwing, obviously you can go with your 2 swim bait trailers, of course. If you wanted to even, put something like this on there, one of the grubs. Honestly, what I've come to use, now I wouldn't have used this if I hadn't found them in the little chatterbait boxes that you get. Something like this, and it's really weird because you look at that and you say, oh, there's no action. This is not going to work, but it really does. It's incredible to me how well just something like that, 2 tails on it. 2 tails, that's it. I mean, just very, very simple. Very simple. And this one's white color, cream color, kind of translucent. And it's just got a lot of white, silver fleck in it. And it reflects the light. See a lot of different colors in there, so I can definitely see how that's appealing. I've seen some of the higher bass anglers up there. Scott Martin was talking about this. I saw this on the video he posted, talking about how he would even throw these right here on there, which is a Zoom speed crawl, Zoom Ultra Vibe speed crawl, and in a white color. He put that on a chartreuse and white chatterbait. I would suggest just go look at his channel if you want a more in-depth on why he does that and everything. But I've got one more jig. Those are going to be thrown on same thing as before, 15-pound fluorocarbon type line or 50-pound braid. You can drop if that's not what you have. I just say use what you have. Don't be concerned with, honestly, a lot of the pros are going to tell you, oh, well, you throw this on this and this on this. That's not the case all the time. They're smart. They know what they're talking about, but they're not in your situation. They do have a lot more money than you do probably, and they've got a lot more invested in their fishing. So don't worry about that. Obviously, I wouldn't want to throw a crankbait on braid. You can get away with it. I don't prefer it. It doesn't give it real good action, but if that's what you got, use it, make it work, because I guarantee you the fish, they're really not going to care. As far as being line shy too, I've never really noticed fish to be line shy, going between different lines. Now maybe you can downsize your line, make it a little bit lighter. That makes a difference because it does increase the amount of action you get. But as far as them being line shy, of braid over monofilament or whatever, monofilament over braid I should say, hadn't noticed that. So if that makes you feel better, do it, but you don't have to. I don't think you have to. Last jig, I'm rambling, but last jig, I believe this is a VMC jig. I'm not for sure which kind. This might be an adrenaline. I'm not for sure. I can't even remember where I bought this from. But I like the V&M style jig better than the I've got some missile jigs that don't really care for those, but this is a crawdad type color, green pumpkin with some orange in it. Got a little rattle in there. I don't know if you can hear it. Obviously going to be pairing that up with a Zoom speed crawl most of the time. Sometimes if I'm feeling adventurous, I'll put something like this. You guys probably recognize this as a Guggenbaits Kraken Crawl. Not a huge fan of Guggenbaits myself. I don't like to go out of my way to buy them. That's not a slam on them. They cost a lot of money, and I don't think there's enough of them in a pack for me to justify buying the Kraken Crawls over the Speed Crawls. I've caught big fish on both. They're both good baits. Whatever fits in your budget, whatever you can afford. Obviously, a bait like this, meant for flipping and pitching up around trees, heavy cover, lily pads. You can use it well in lily pads. 50 to 65 pound braid. Depending on the situation, you can get away with less. Just is your situation. And I'm going to be throwing that on a 7.4 heavy. And the only reason I even bought this rod is because I saw it in a store and I thought, oh, flipping is fun. Let me get a flipping rod. And I would definitely not recommend that you guys get a flipping rod for one of your first 2 or 3 rods. You really don't need it. You can flip with a 7-foot really, really well too if you know how to do it. But this is my jig rod, and this is a Lew's bait cast reel. It's an LFS speed spool 8.3 to 1. Fast retrieve. If I make a bad flip, I bring it right back in, flip it right back out. I do not use this very often. Very, very rarely do I use my flipping rod. And that's because where I fish, there's generally not a lot of calls to flip, which is another reason I say stick away from a technique-specific rod. And when I say technique-specific, I don't mean, you know, as far as going into a strict finesse rod, because that's good to have a finesse rod because you're covering a broad range of bass fishing techniques. But it's something like this, you know, I mean, it even says it on the rod, and you probably won't be able to read this, but it says pitching rod on it. And I don't flip and pitch enough to justify owning this rod. But I have it, and I'm going to use it. The next setup is a 610 medium heavy. This reel is a 6.8 to 1 Lew's Mach Speed spool. I got my 15-pound fluorocarbon copolymer line on here. You can throw jigs on this as well. Mostly swim jigs, chatterbaits. You can use those on here just right. I mean, perfect in that, you know, 6.5 to 7 foot range really is where you want to be for a swim jig, in my opinion. This one, you guys have seen this in my other videos. This is my 6 foot, used to be 6.6, medium heavy Gander Mountain Vortex rod with a Lew's Mach Speed spool 50-pound braid. Actually have a swim jig on here right now, and I mean, I was bombing this sucker last time I was fishing right down the bank, probably making, you know, 30-yard cast. Is really, really getting out there with this 6-foot rod. Had several real strong hits. I just didn't capitalize on them like I needed to. When I did capitalize on the bites I was getting, they turned out to be smaller fish. But, you know, swim jigs will produce fish. I've caught them that big, bass so small. When I set the hook on them, they literally had one fly out of the water, land in the boat with me. I guess that was my bad for setting the hook too hard, but you know, I've caught them that small. I've caught them, you know, several pounds, getting up to the chatterbait, you know, 6-7 pounds on them. So don't be afraid to use them. Don't be afraid to try something new. If you've never used a swim jig before, I highly encourage it. It's a different technique. It really is. I started getting into it within the past couple years, but you will not regret it once you start to catch fish. It's so fun. It's chunking and whining, chunking and whining. I mean, just like a lot of people would fish a lipless crankbait or something like that if you're not really advanced. Super easy to use, super easy to catch fish on. Real good all-around baits. So that's all for this video. You guys stay safe and keep doing stuff in the outdoors, and I will see you on the next one.